Faith unlocks freedom. And I was thinking about my GPS on my phone. So how many of you use your GPS on your phone? Yeah, a lot of hands. Okay, so, without it now, I'm kind of in trouble. There was a time when I could read this thing called a map that my children don't know exists for their generation. If we're talking about going somewhere, they're like, well, check the GPS. Right? If battery runs out, we're in trouble. And I was thinking about my GPS, and one time when I was taking it, and it let me down. I was heading, my wife and I were heading to 100 Huntley Street. We were going there for an evening thing that was going on. She lived in Hamilton at the time. We were still dating at the time, and I was visiting her there. She was living in Hamilton. And we set the GPS to take us there. And it took us, and we were almost there. We could see it, and we were on this road that turned into not a road. There was a bar across it, and it turned out it was a walking path. And it turned out that had recently been changed, but our GPS didn't know. And so it took us to this dead end, and we could see it, and we couldn't get there. And it was pretty frustrating. And we tried to reset it, and it kept bringing us back to that spot. Eventually, we just had to drive far away and get it to look and set another course, and it eventually took us there, but it took another 15 minutes, and we could see it. And that was really frustrating. My GPS let me down. And, sometimes we can rely on something to get us somewhere, and it gets us off course. And faith is walking in obedience to God's voice. It's following what he's calling you to do. I remember a time in my life when I had been teaching for 5 years. I really enjoyed it. I loved working with the kids. It was a beautiful way to interact every day with children and be able to have an influence on their lives. I had worked my way up. I was a vice principal at that point too, so I was able to help other people. And I went to sign my contract, and I couldn't sign it. I didn't have peace. I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. Good job. I like being there. We had this plan where there was a real discount, and we could send all of our kids there then too. As a teacher there, my wife had it all mapped out. And God was calling me by faith to do something else. And that was challenging. There were many times when I was praying and asking God, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? They came back with another contract because they wanted me to stay. And I had to step out in faith and actually say, no, I think God's leading me somewhere else. I don't even know where it is yet. But he's telling me to step away. And that was a real season of faith because I became a stay-at-home dad. My wife got a job working in ministry as a children's pastor. And there were days, and I've mentioned this before, when I was like, boy, a class of 25 students would be easier than staying home with my kids. And every stay-at-home mom just nodded her head. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And it was seeking God just in faith. Okay, God, you told me something. I'm going to trust that you know. But boy, was it hard. And then a position came up. I applied. I stepped into pastoring. And the beautiful thing is, the week I started was when I received my last check from teaching. God was in the midst of it. And so it seemed like every time someone came to our home, they just stayed as a part of our family. But I got to hear the journeys of some of these kids and what they experienced and what family meant to them, and how dysfunctional some of the family they'd been through. And even in some of the homes they came from, I remember 3 of the kids, they came from a home, they had been in an abusive home, and they came into a home where they said they were going to adopt them and they were going to be part of the family. But something strange happened during their time in that family. They were never truly a part of that family. There would be certain privileges and things that the other people in the family got that they didn't. And then what ended up happening for 2 summers is the family went on vacation, but they weren't invited. Can you imagine how that would hurt you? Can you imagine how much you'd struggle with actually believing you were part of a family when they went away on some special family time and they had another family look after you? And so they came into our home really struggling with the concept that they could really be a part of someone's family. And I remember when we went away to camp the first summer, there was a lot of anxiety with them. And then when we finally got to camp and they were there, they couldn't believe it. They were starting to accept the reality that they were a part of this family. We actually are treated the same as the rest of the family. And for them, it was really incredible. You know, there was a lot of distrust. They started to trust a little bit at that point. And for them, family started to have a different meaning to them. We need family. We all need family. We need people that accept us. We need people that we can do life with. We need people that are going to support us. When you don't have that, you don't flourish in the same way. You don't develop, you don't mature the way that you could. There's damage done. And so Paul is saying here, you are now part of the family. You are a son and daughter the same as Jesus.